Welcome to the Sports Spectrum Podcast, the intersection of sports and faith. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I am Jason Romano, and this is Sports Spectrum. You can reach us on our website, sportspectrum.com. We have daily devotionals there, content, articles, stories, and of course, podcasts, all available at sportspectrum.com. Make sure you bookmark that website. Go there every single day at sportspectrum.com. And then if you want to email me, my email address is jason@sportspectrum.com. You can reach me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. If you have any feedback or you have a guest idea, including today's interview with Vad Lee, the former James Madison and Georgia Tech All-American quarterback, that came from a suggestion from a listener through Twitter who tweeted at me and said, you need to have Vad Lee on your show. He's got a great story. And here we are today, bringing you the story of Vad Lee. So we appreciate when you reach out. And again, my email address, jason@sportspectrum.com. And lastly, I want to tell you about our magazine, our Sports Spectrum magazine. You can subscribe today. It's $18 for an entire year. So it's super cheap. And you get 5 issues, plus maybe 1 or 2 more bonus issues of the Sports Spectrum magazine. The pillar of this ministry is founded on the Sports Spectrum magazine going all the way back to 1985. And today, I would put our magazine up against any magazine out there, sports or non-sports related. It is a awesome resource for you to subscribe to read, but then to give it to a kid, a son, a daughter, maybe a grandson, a granddaughter. Maybe you're leading Young Life like Vad Lee is doing, and you want to get a subscription or 2 for some Young Life folks. Maybe you're in a small group or a life group or a men's group or maybe a youth group. The Sports Spectrum magazine is a great resource for you to check out, and I highly recommend that you subscribe because it's really just awesome to have that in your hand to be able to read and then to give to someone else. You can subscribe at sportspectrum.com. You'll see the Sports Spectrum magazine right at the top there when you go to the website, sportspectrum.com. And again, it's $18. It's super cheap. It's the only thing we charge for here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum, and it's a great way to sow into our ministry by subscribing to Sports Spectrum's magazine. Go to sportspectrum.com and subscribe today. We're also thankful to our partners and sponsors today on the show, Convoy of Hope, a faith-based nonprofit organization with a driving passion to feed the world through children's feeding initiatives, community outreaches, and disaster response. You can check them out right now at convoynation.com, convoynation.com. Vad Lee is our guest today on Sports Spectrum, and man, does he have a pretty awesome story. This guy was a stud in high school. AP North Carolina State Player of the Year, first team All-State, and a state champion his senior year in 2010. They went 16-0 and won the state title. He went on to play college football at Georgia Tech for 3 seasons and then to James Madison for a couple years. And when he was at JMU, he led them to the 2014 FCS playoffs. He set numerous pass records, was named AP third-team FCS All-American. In 2015, with the expectations even higher, he led JMU to a 7-0 start, and then he broke his foot. But in that game, in that season, I should say, there was a specific game that took place before his injury against SMU, when his team won 48-45, and he set a Division I record by becoming the first player to both run and pass for 275 yards in a single game. Think about that. In a game, a quarterback passed for 275 and ran for 275. That's unbelievable, and he's the first person in Division I history to ever do that. Now, that foot injury that he suffered 8 games into his career at James Madison ended his college career. And he had a stint in the CFL. He played some arena ball, had a look in the NFL, even played in the Your Call football series in 2019, was with the XFL in late 2019 into 2020. But God had bigger plans for Vad, and he brought him into ministry, first as a team chaplain with Indiana and the Hoosiers football team, then a character coach at James Madison in 2019. And now he is the director of campus ministry with Young Life at the University of Maryland. And he's also written a couple books, and God has taken him on a completely different path than he probably thought he was going to be on when he was thriving and succeeding in college at the game of football. So this is a great story from Vad Lee, the former James Madison and Georgia Tech quarterback. He joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. What's up, Vad Lee? How are you, sir? Welcome to the show.
Doing well, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. I follow you, and you do such a wonderful work. So thank you for having me. Appreciate
it. Looking forward to this conversation. And I was doing my research. You know, you and I were kind of talking beforehand, and it's kind of how I roll here with my show. I need to do my research and kind of get some background on certain people that I don't know all of their story. And I don't know all of your story, obviously, from doing the research. But the one thing I did find was that your dream growing up in Durham, North Carolina, was to play professional football and be a pastor. The football player thing I can see, and probably was just like you as a kid, wanted to be a professional athlete. But being a pastor, Vad, tell me that story, because that's pretty unique for a young kid to want to grow up and dream and become a pastor. Football, we can see. The pastor thing,
yeah.
Can you explain a little bit?
No. It's something that I can't say that I get the credit for. It's something that is all God designed. Because when I was young, from a very early age, I was that kid that was preaching and kind of mocking the pastor in a fun way, but really a way that I wanted to be that guy. You know, I wanted to be that person on with the microphone and be able to change people's lives through the word of God. And I was able to discern from a young age that I too can see myself being in a position where I'm able to influence people with such great purpose and passion. But first you got to be able to build a relationship with God. You know, when I was young, I would say that I wanted to be a pastor all the time. But as I become older, I realized that, I have a lot of growth in myself, right? To be able to then, and we're never perfect, but to be able to be called instead of just forcing myself into that position. So it's interesting, Jason. I really no longer say that. Although I do believe that is in me, I just want it to be orchestrated by God and not by man.
And that's hard to think about when you're a little kid, obviously. And football probably comes into play, I would imagine, at a young age as well. And you were a pretty great football player, especially in high school, winning the state title. You guys went 16-0 your senior year, a 4-star recruit going to Georgia Tech. So tell me about those, I guess, refining years for you at a young age during your teenage years, and God is kind of blessing you with this talent. You're seeing a lot of success. What was the most challenging part of those years for you when you look back now and you think about, maybe from a surface level or from an outside world level, you were on top of the world, right? You're doing great. You're a 4-star recruit, and people are probably calling you left and right. But what were some of those challenging moments for you during those formative years?
Yeah, I had some awesome moments in those early years growing up in Durham, North Carolina, playing football at Hillside High School and going to school, which has such rich history. I feel as though there should be a movie made based on Hillside one day. We were able to win the state championship. I won a North Carolina 4A Player of the Year, went undefeated 16-0 and really had some really great things going for myself. But I would say some of the challenging parts that comes with that is being able to balance the athletic part and knowing who you are outside of the realms of athletics, right? You're rewarded based on how well you play on the football field, or you get used to a certain applause. You get used to the crowd applauding you, which that does not last forever. And you don't understand that at a young age, right? You think that those applause will last forever. And, for me, I would say the challenging part is understanding who you are outside of what you do. Football is something that God was able to use to navigate me towards purpose, but it's not the purpose. And when you're a young athlete and you're getting scholarship offers, coaches are calling you, you're getting ranked, you're going to camps, you're looked at, the camera is following you, right? That creates a huge platform for yourself, right? But it's for yourself. And we know that everything for yourself has to come to an end one day. I tell a lot of young athletes that the only thing that's guaranteed about the game of football is that you will become an ex-football player. But when you are following God and you're trying to pursue a road to righteousness, that those things last forever. So I would say, I had some challenges in recruiting, the loyalty part, right? That's a big challenge because I committed to Georgia Tech before my senior year in high school because I was set out we were going to win the state championship. It hasn't been done at my school, and I was determined as a leader that I wasn't going to allow any distractions to stop us from our goals. And so I made a decision. I said, hey, I'm going to commit to this school. Well, one school that I was leaning towards said that, hey, we got to move on. You're taking too long, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess you just made a decision easier for me. Another school here and there. People not really committing to me fully as the quarterback, right? Because I played receiver my sophomore year. So a lot of my scholarship offers early on came from actually playing receiver. I had over 1,000 yards receiving as a little baby, sophomore receiver. And, I just remember South Carolina and the big schools, SEC schools came at me and they wanted me to play receiver. And I told them, looked them in the face and said, hey, I'm the quarterback. And they're like, well, you just showed on film you're a receiver. I said, no, I just have a senior in front of me who's better right now, but I'm the quarterback. And, obviously Georgia Tech was there from the very beginning. They see my athleticism, and the system that they ran at the time was a triple option system, which, by the way, I never ran the triple option until I got to Georgia Tech. And that's another story. But, the loyalty piece, I committed to Georgia Tech. I wanted to honor my commitment. I had over 15 other scholarship offers come after my senior year when people seen that I exploded as a passer. And, I helped recruit some of those guys in my recruiting class. I started to build some fan support. And, although, that system may not have fit my skill set, it was a loyalty thing that I was willing to go out of loyalty. Now, that's something that I kind of, I talk to a lot of guys about making the best decision for you. Right. But that's hard to do at a young age, especially when there's some relational equity involved where you have, you have relationships that go beyond the football field. So I will say that God orchestrated my path to the schools that I went to, both Georgia Tech and James Madison, because I met some key people in my life that was needed at Georgia Tech. And I also met some key people in my life that was needed at James Madison for the time. And there's a time for everything.
Vad Lee is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. Walk me through your journey as a follower of Christ during those years as well. And you kind of alluded to it, God's ordained plan, identity, which is a big thing in sports. But where were you as a follower of Christ during those years? And, maybe take me through what that was like in the evolution of your faith.
Yeah. I was probably a baby, right? And in terms of spiritually, I was very, I was a spiritual baby in a sense when I arrived at Georgia Tech. Now, I always knew that there was a presence. I always knew that there was a calling towards my life. So I was the one that was trying to walk it out. I heard names like Preacher Boy, Jesus Boy, don't curse around Vad, just little stuff like that. Yeah. That was jokes. But it also confirmed that what God is doing in me is real, right? And I can't hide it and I can't run away from it. Now, there has been times where I have tried to hide it and I have tried to run away from it. But God's presence remained, throughout it all. We just have to make that decision, right? We have to make that decision to follow him and hear his voice. And, so when I got to Georgia Tech, there is a man named Derek Moore who I actually used to follow on YouTube. I used to look at all his YouTube videos when I was in high school, because I wanted to be the emotional leader, hint to earlier, I was talking about being a pastor. Really, I wanted to be, the emotional leader. I wanted to be the leader. I wanted to be a leader.
Yeah.
And so what I did, I started going to YouTube, and I think YouTube is one of the best platforms, free platforms for people to go and learn things, learn different crafts. For me, it was leadership. And so I went online and I looked at Derek Moore, and I immediately fell in love with him. I fell in love with Georgia Tech. And when Georgia Tech offered me, I spoke to Derek Moore way more than I spoke to anybody else, because I knew what I was getting out of him. And it was also a manly presence, that a man of God presence that I was in deficit of. I didn't have that in my life. And when I seen that from him, I don't think I was wise enough to make that decision. I think it was the Holy Spirit and God, now looking back, making that decision for me. And him and I would sit in the classroom, and I remember the first scripture that I memorized was John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it just blew my mind away, where every time I read this word, every time I read this Bible, I have an opportunity to encounter Jesus. I have an opportunity to encounter God. And that transformed my life. That helped me on a path in which I was heading for. So I got involved in some ministry efforts, like Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which was the main ministry that I was a part of. I got involved in being student advisory council, which wasn't necessarily faith, but it was more of a athletic leadership program that I was involved in. But yeah, that kind of rock started. That kind of moved my faith towards the journey that I'm on today. So I credit Derek Moore. I also got to credit my grandmother, who actually, when I was a young boy, I actually would meet her at church. I grew up in a household that I was the only one that went to church. And I'm 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 years old, where later I found out that, my grandmother really is the reason why I'm here. My mom was going through some things at the time, and, really didn't want to have another child. And God gave a vision to my grandmother, which, is so awesome. I didn't know this story until about 2 years ago. But it all makes sense to why I would meet her at church on Sunday mornings. And we would have a good time. And, I just really credit her for my development spiritually at a young age. And then one last person is my spiritual mother, Phyllis Joyner, who's also from Durham, North Carolina. Dr. Phyllis Joyner now, she just graduated with her doctorate at the age of, I can't remember what age she is, but she's over 60. And so she is just a great representation of keeping a dream alive, right? Going for purpose, even though it's not popular. But anyway, I can go on about her, but she definitely helped me grow my faith as well. So I have some influential people in my life, and not all the time, they're going to be with you, right? As a baby, we grow up and then we have to go out on our own. Well, for me, I don't necessarily have all of these people right necessarily at my hip, but I have them in my ear. God has used them to be sometimes the voice of reason. I'm able to hear their voice for the voice of correction. God is able to use people to help influence your life in a greater way.
Let's take a quick break to tell you about our partners and sponsors today, Convoy of Hope. And in the United States and throughout the world, countless families are living on the fringe or have fallen into the depths of poverty and suffering. And Convoy of Hope is doing something about it. They are fighting hunger, poverty, and suffering in the United States and throughout the world. They're a faith-based nonprofit organization with a driving passion to feed the world through disaster response, community outreaches, and children's feeding initiatives. And right now, they want you to join them in the starting lineup so you can join your favorite players and teams in partnering with Convoy of Hope to fight hunger, poverty, and suffering in the U.S. and throughout the world. In doing so, you can advocate and give and network and volunteer to help ensure that those in need receive hot meals, groceries, haircuts, health and dental screenings, family portraits, socks, shoes, clothing, school supplies, hygiene kits, and much more. To learn more and be a part of the great work Convoy of Hope is doing, you can visit them at convoynation.com. That's the website to donate, to get involved, and to sow into the wonderful ministry of Convoy of Hope, a faith-based nonprofit organization. Check them out at convoynation.com. So you mentioned Georgia Tech. You played there 3 seasons and then transferred to James Madison. And at JMU, you set a bunch of records. And again, it's seemingly on top of the world, right? And then there was this injury that took place, and we'll get to that injury in a second. But you became the first player in Division I history to rush and pass for over 275 yards in a game. I want to repeat that because that's pretty crazy when you think about it. 275 passing yards, 275 rushing yards. So I need to ask you about that particular game because that's one of those all-timer type games. Tell me about the memories that stand out when you think back to that game.
Yeah, this may sound crazy, but my first memory is that was not my best game.
Interesting.
I feel like I left some things on the field, but that's going into the strategic things. But, going into that game, being at Georgia Tech on the big time level, ACC football, right? Now transferring down, right, to James Madison FCS football, which really for me, it wasn't necessarily a transfer down, right? That's when we start talking about purpose over position, right? But in the broad spectrum, it's a transfer down compared to, FBS and FCS.
Sure.
And going into that season, we had one FBS opponent on our schedule. And it was the 4th game of the year, which was unique because usually FBS teams, they schedule FCS teams on the first game of the season, trying to get it going, trying to get things going. You usually beat them up on the first week.
Yeah. And
I knew that 4th game of the year, that was a great opportunity for us to go and beat an FBS team. Usually, there's probably a short list. I don't know how many FCS teams that beat FBS teams, but I wanted to be a part of that side of history. And so I personally had that game circled on our calendar. Not saying that I overlooked anybody else, but I knew that game was the last opportunity for me to do the things that I thought that I would do on the FBS level at Georgia Tech. And, when we played there, it was an amazing atmosphere, environment. It was their homecoming.
It was SMU, right? You played SMU. We
played SMU. Yes, sir. And it was their homecoming, and JMU fans, we traveled well there. We have a big Dallas following of JMU folks there. And it really felt like a good day. And anyway, my coaches, they just did an unbelievable job with the game plan. And however it happened, I had no idea that I ran for that many yards. I never dreamed about running for that many yards. I always dreamed about passing for over 270, of course. But in terms of doing both, I don't think it was a thing that I can say that I game planned for that. I did not. But it was a thing that just kind of the flow of the game. And, if we get spiritual, sometimes in life, you're in the zone, right? And where things just seem to happen and just go the right way for you. And then there's other times where you're not in the zone and where things seems to be crashing down on you. But for that day, I was blessed enough to be able to make history. And that's one of the proudest moments that I can take with me. Although it probably will be broken someday, right? Every record is going to be broken at some point. I'm surprised Lamar Jackson or somebody didn't do it, but I'm sure he was close, right? I'm sure he was up there and set many records for himself. But anyway, it was an amazing accomplishment, but I have to give credit to my team. We had some playmakers on that team. In fact, majority of the team came back last year. I mean, the next year, the majority of the team came back the next year and they won the national championship. So that just credits to JMU.
Well, the cool thing about that game too is you won it. I didn't mention that you won the game. It's not easy to win a game and have, you could have had all those statistics and broke all those records, but if you lost, I'm guessing it probably wouldn't have mattered as much.
Well, every quarterback dreams for the opportunity to go and lead your team down to a winning touchdown in the last seconds, right? I remember as a kid being in my backyard, throwing the football, going through situations like shooting a basketball, 5, 4, 3, 2, shoot your jump shot.
Of course.
Right? I remember throwing it to the tire and same scenario, 5, 4, escaping the pocket, running all around, doing the Michael Vick, just running. And I got to make it into the tire for it to be a touchdown. And I just remember those moments. Right. And it was a really cool thing that moment, inspired moments way later in life. We never know what our position now will inspire later. And I just see that little kid in me when I think about the SMU game and leading us down to probably a 6 or 7 play drive, throwing the game winning touchdown on that play. So that's one of the greatest, greatest memories that I have as an athlete, period.
Yeah, what a game that was. People need to go back and find that on YouTube because that was one heck of a game. And just as things are going great, right? You're 7-0, you're on your way, you break your foot. And, I know I had to imagine that had to be so devastating for you because you, like you say, you wanted to do this, not just for yourself, you wanted your team and to accomplish and achieve, and you want to be there. And that's the number one ability for an athlete is what? Availability, right? And then you break your foot. So let's go back and learn about the lessons that you kind of took with you and took away with you going through that adversity during that time.
Yeah, well, there's many lessons that happened during that time. One of the lessons I actually ended up writing a book called Purpose Over Position, and I started off the book with this because this was a major lesson that I learned. And, in short terms, life goes on either with or without you. Right. And that's what I learned in that game when I got hurt. You can be the man, you can be the star, you can be the starting quarterback, you can have money, you can have fame, you can have all of these things. But again, the only thing that's guaranteed about any game, right, is that you will be an X whatever. And any position, you will be an X whatever that position is. And for me, that reality hit home because I actually kept playing. I knew that if I kept playing, that my adrenaline would keep running and that I wouldn't, that I wouldn't be off the field. I wouldn't feel it. I'll just keep playing. Yeah. And I played for about 4 more plays until we came down to a 4th and 2. Well, 4th and 2 is usually our bread and butter where we run the quarterback power behind the running back. The running back is the lead blocker, and I'm 225. I'm able to get through there and get the first down. Well, coach called a timeout because we couldn't run that play. And it was during that timeout where I really had to embrace the situation. And I really had to make a decision that I didn't want to make or that I wouldn't have made, but I knew that my body wouldn't allow me to keep playing. And I would be hurting the team if I stayed in the game. And I just remember walking off the field. I remember looking back and seeing the referee round the whistle for play. I remember the crowd on their feet anticipating this 4th and 2. And by the way, we were playing against our rival, the Richmond Spiders, which College Game Day, that was College Game Day game as well. College Game Day was there. So that whole week was crazy. Yeah. And I seen the crowd kept cheering. I seen my teammates kept playing, the referee blowing the whistle, my coaches kept coaching. But here I am walking and limping out. And it was just a revelation for me that, things really goes on. But what type of impact are you leaving behind, right? Am I able to walk off that field proud of my efforts? Am I able to walk off that field with joy? although in the moment I probably wasn't feeling that, I was in tears and crying, but at the same time, I realized that, it's something that happens in life.
That's a really good lesson there. He's Vad Lee. He's joining us here on Sports Spectrum. And it's interesting when your career is over, your college career, obviously the dreams and aspirations going all the way back to being a young kid and a young boy is to play professional football. And you did that, but it wasn't in the NFL. You had a mini camp, opportunity and a look here and there, but not drafted, no NFL. But interestingly enough, when you get to 24, 25, 26 years old, God had a different plan in many ways, like you talked about, purpose over position. And he brought you into this world of pastor and chaplain and character coach. And I'm wondering, just for you, what was that like to discover that your purpose or God's plan, or both, was not to necessarily be an NFL quarterback, but you still played, and you have said that you played as recently as last year. You were still staying in shape and ready to go if an opportunity came, but you could kind of see God directing you into a different area in ministry and as a chaplain, obviously an author as well, which we'll talk about your books in a second, speaker, teacher, mentor, all of those things. What was that like to kind of discover that purpose wasn't going to be necessarily a professional football player in the NFL?
Yeah, that's one of the things that athletes struggle with is transitioning, right? We all struggle with transitions in life, and transitioning off the field, from the field to now going into the real world and transitioning off the field. That's in the process that I am still going through. I'm 27 years old. It's one of those things that I do not think is easy. It's not an easy process. It's one that's about dying to self, right? Mm-hmm. And even working out this morning, I was working out this morning, and I realized how working out is a form of dying to self, right? I don't necessarily want to do this all the time, but I know that I want my body to be in a great form, right? And going to spiritually, we want our spiritual life to be healthy, right? I want my body to be healthy. That's why I work out. Well, I want my relationship with God to be healthy. With that, we have to make sure that we are staying in tune with him and understanding how he is positioning us for greater purpose. It's not that your position doesn't matter, right? We all have positions, right? We all have positions in life. The earth itself is a position, right? God's kingdom is the purpose that we're ultimately striving towards. And once we understand that, we realize that God is always covering us with his purpose over our position. And for me, I just, it's one of those things that is a daily overcoming. I'll say is daily. I'm a daily overcomer where I can wake up tomorrow and still have that dream when I was 9 years old, right? And I can wake up tomorrow feeling like, man, I need to go work out because somebody's going to give me a call, right? And what I'm understanding is there's scripture in Colossians 3:23, right? It says, making sure that is whatever you do, work at it, whatever you do, right? So meaning that it can be football, it can be to the businessman, it can be to the entrepreneur, whatever you do, make sure you're doing it for the glory of God. Make sure you're working with all of your heart as if you're working for God. Well, I can still dream, but my purpose necessarily is not in the position in itself, is in whatever God is orchestrating behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And for me, since my injury, I can't tell you how many of players would call me and say, man, how did you get through this? Or, I just had a father last night call me, his 13-year-old son. His son is like the number 10 recruit in North Carolina, and he just tore a ligament in his foot, or he has something going on with his foot. Well, his father thought of me and made the connection and called me. Wow. And now I have that platform. I have that opportunity to speak in someone's life who may have been broken at some point, right? All injury is a form of brokenness. Well, if we look at it, we're all broken, right? And even the healthiest person is broken in some area. And sometimes it is necessary for us to go through certain things so that now it can build a whole nother level of dimension where we're able to now speak and pour into this certain area or this position. So really it's a ministry platform, right?
Yeah.
It's a ministry opportunity where now I feel really, really led to the guys who may encounter some type of injury, right? Most people like me, right? When I walked off the field, the crowd, the players, the coaches, the referee, they stay where they are.
Right.
Right. But you're in the locker room crying your eyes out. You're thinking about your future, right? You are devastated because you didn't think that it would happen to me, right? But that's where my heart is. And when I was a chaplain in Indiana and also at James Madison, I always embraced those moments when guys went in the locker room for an injury. I sometimes didn't even see some good games, right? Because I'm in the locker room with those guys who are just crying their hearts out. And those are the memories that I remember because that's what I had and that's what I needed during my time. So I have some sensitivity there where it's not just about football either. It's about any brokenness where now I realize that there is purpose in our pain and that we can apply purpose to our pain with the right perspective, with the godly perspective.
And I love as we wind down where God has brought you to today. And I know it's not about position, but it's about purpose. But in many ways, the purpose that you're living out is with a pretty cool position as the director of campus ministry with Young Life at the University of Maryland. So tell me what that role entails, because it sounds like it's more than just athletes that you're connected with here and working with and pouring into. So tell us about that role currently that you're in.
Yeah, this was a new role for me because essentially I've always been connected to athletics where, I minister to athletes. I am an athlete. I've been playing since I was 5 years old. So I've always been connected with athletes, but it's just God. I think that this is something that he was aligning because showing me that my purpose is bigger than athletics or purpose is bigger than sports or my identity is bigger than the game of football. And, when the Young Life opportunity came, I remember I'm like, I don't know if this is for me because I know where my gifting is and I know what my past is of sports. And, through prayer and fasting and meditation, I really, felt that God was leading me towards this role as the campus director at the University of Maryland, simply because it was an opportunity for me to step out of one position and open myself up to other positions. And as the campus director, I get the wonderful opportunity to just do life with students, to walk with students, to talk with students, to help, to encourage, to engage. Obviously, this pandemic season has adjusted some of our methods, right? Where we're online a lot. Sometimes I'm still able to go, on campus and meet up with a student or maybe go off campus and have lunch with a student. Yeah. I simply get to do life with students and I get to build them up spiritually, emotionally, right? And just really just go and show them a way of life outside of the partying scene, outside of scenes that may not be building them up. So my purpose in life, along with Young Life, but outside of Young Life as well, is to build up young people. I really do believe that that God has purposed me at this time to build up young people. And Young Life has given me that amazing platform to be able to do so.
And you got 2 books. You've mentioned it, Purpose Over Position, that released earlier this year. And That's My Friend, the children's book. There's the Purpose Over Position book. There's the That's My Friend book. Dude, you wrote 2 books in like 8 months or so. What are you doing? That's great. Congratulations. And tell us about both of these books really quick and where our listeners can get them.
Yeah. So that's my friend. My wife and I, we co-authored that. And that came last summer with everything that was going on in 2020 with the pandemic, but also the social injustice, the racial divide that was going on, the cultural differences, the protests, all of the things that were going on. My wife and I really wanted to contribute, and we wanted to contribute to the conversation of unity. And, we wanted something where people can learn from and people can grow from. And for us, we realized that writing a children's book that we may not be able to change an adult, right? We may not be able to change a person who has been stuck in their ways for a very long time. But what we can do is try to at least influence younger kids towards unity. So if we take a look at this picture, we see all different cultures, all different diversities. What they're wearing represents different cultures and different things, and is based on my daughter, Soraya. I kid you not. My oldest daughter, I have two daughters, Soraya and Sanaya. And Soraya, which means that there's another children's book on the way, because I have to write one for Sanaya as well.
That's right.
But Soraya, every time she sees another person, she immediately says, "That's my friend." Right? She doesn't need to know their name. She doesn't need to know their race. She doesn't need to know their gender. She doesn't need to know any of those things. But what she does, what she see is, "That is my friend." So even before your name, your friend. And if only we could learn that lesson, if only we could learn from our children, if only we can learn from those who are pure, right? A lot of this stuff we've been taught, right? Racism, divide, division, all of this stuff. This stuff is taught. Yeah. It's not something that we're just born with, but we are born with love, right? We are born with the qualities that, forgiveness. Anyway, I can go on and on about the book, but That's My Friend is pretty special to us because it's based on our family, and we've enjoyed it. We've had so many parents though reach out to us and say, "Man, I think I needed this. I don't know if my kid is going to understand this. I needed to understand this." And that has been very, very, very encouraging. The first time that I got to present this publicly was actually to a bunch of adults, which is funny. I got to read this publicly to a bunch of adults at Young Life. And that was really, really cool. And then Purpose Over Position. This is kind of like my baby. Although this book came out first, right? This is like a 4-year project. This is something that I knew that I wanted to write back after my injury. So I got injured in 2015. I started writing this book in 2016, at the end of 2016. And, this has been a long time coming for this book. And I think that I needed to live a little more life and experiences in order to write a book, right? It couldn't just be all injury, all life is rough. God is bringing me out. No, I needed to see how God was going to bring me out. I needed to see what this adversity is how this adversity is going to move me into purpose and move me into whatever God is calling me to. And I've been able to experience that. And, Purpose Over Position, Discerning God's Plan to Live a Life Full of Purpose is a book, not just for an athlete, but it's a book also for those who just need encouragement. It's more than just, I used to say Purpose Over Position. Purpose Over Position is a motto that I try to live by, but it's more than a motto. It's a total way of life. And it has the ability to transform the way that we think and live. And so I felt really called to write this book, mainly because I know that there's so many people that are positional based, right? It's about me. It's about the position that I'm in today. It's about climbing the corporate ladder. It's about becoming in the NFL, getting drafted. All of these positions in life, we're always focused on positions. When we watch commercials, positional, everything is about positions. All right. But we have to be able to apply purpose in everything that we do. Going back to Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, right? You're able to apply purpose when you apply scripture or when you apply the word of God to your life. So, for me, these books have meant a lot to me. They've meant a lot on my journey, and you can get those books, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon. Personally, you can get them from vadlee.org, where I'll have the opportunity to sign it and maybe put a note in there for you. So if you wanted to go that route, you could. But yeah, we are just blessed and so thankful for all that God is doing through these books.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. I mean, God's brought you in. Who thought at 27, 28, you said you're 27, that you'd have two books and you were working with Young Life as opposed to being like a quarterback in the NFL. It's pretty cool to watch God kind of take you into a different place, but also I think use you in an even bigger way than he would have used you if you stayed, into the path of being a pro quarterback. And who knows, maybe that'll still happen too. You never know where God brings you. vadlee.org is the website. You can get his books there and learn more about all that he's doing. Vad, thanks, buddy. This was great. Thanks for coming on the show. Really awesome conversation, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Jason, this was an awesome. Keep doing what you do, and I appreciate you having me on.
That was awesome from Vad Lee, the former James Madison and Georgia Tech quarterback. Appreciate him joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. The website, vadlee.org, vadlee.org, and he's got those two new books out, Purpose Over Position, and the children's book, That's My Friend, all available at vadlee.org. Appreciate Vad for joining us, and just a great story he's got. Just appreciate his heart for the Lord and his desire to help people find their God-given purpose. Thanks to Vad for joining us. Thanks to Convoy of Hope as well, our partners and sponsors here at Sports Spectrum. Check them out at convoynation.com to learn more and be a part of the great work Convoy of Hope is doing, fighting hunger, poverty, and suffering in the United States and throughout the world. convoynation.com. Also want to direct you to our website, sportspectrum.com. Before we get out and finish our podcast today, make sure you go to sportspectrum.com. That's the website that has all of our content, magazine. You can subscribe there as well. Devotionals, podcasts, articles, videos, all available at our website, the home base for our content, sportspectrum.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on the show. My name is Jason Romano. Can't wait to have you joining us and see where our next show is going to take us. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe.